about the client. Actually here, after typing this MAC address, we can see the search result, and here it find one client, and here now I'm going to click on the view list for finding more information about this client. This figure shows an example. At a glance, you can see the client MAC address. This is the client MAC address, and after that the IP address, and after that IP type, for example IPv4, username, and then the wireless network adapter vendor. Here we can see the Intel, location, the name of the PI map, which is obscured in the figure, and after that here for example we have device name, the wireless LAN controller or WCM hosting the client, and after that for example the controller interface, this is the blue interface, and then VLAN number, VLAN is 36, 802.11 protocol, here we have 802.11 AC, client status is associated, and finally the association time. This is all very helpful information because you may have already learned more about the client. For example, you now know its IP address, a user or host name, which controller it has joined, which controller interface and VLAN it is using, and that it has an active association with an AP. You can display much more detailed information about the client by clicking the radio button on the to the left of the client entry, this radio button. This figure continues with the example client showing detail about the client general configuration, and after that we have the AP controller session, and after that the security setting. Here we have general information, session information, and then security information. From this information you can confirm which 802.11 authentication and wireless security policy and encryption and extensible authentication protocol or EAP type the client is using. Perhaps the most important information about the client is listed as the policy manager state. This is the policy manager state, and as you can see here, before a controller will permit a client to fully associate with a basic service set, the client must progress through a sequence of states. Each state refers to a policy that the client must meet before moving on to the next state. This table lists and describes the client policy states. A probing client always begins in the start state, as you can see here, state, and then moves into layer 2 policy states and layer 3 policy states. For example, if the client is attempting to associate with a WLAN that is configured for some form of 802.1x authentication, the client must pass through the 802.1x request, as you can see, REQD, okay, state. If it is successfully authenticates, it can move further down the list of states. Ultimately, each client should end up in the run state, where it has fully associated with the BSS and is permitted to pass traffic over the WLAN. If you find a client that is consistently shown in a state other than run, the client must be having a problem passing the policy of that state. For example, a client that is stuck in the 802.1x underline REQD is likely having trouble authenticating successfully. That could be because the client is sending an incorrect key or has an invalid certificate, or because the radio server is down. A client stuck in DHCP REQD, okay, this state, actually is having trouble obtaining an IP address. The controller monitors the dynamic host configuration protocol or DHCP request of each client, as well as the DHCP offer returned to each client. If an offer is not seen, the client is stuck waiting. One exception is a client that is using a static IP address without the need for DHCP, so long as the WLAN is configured to not require DHCP, the controller will move the client on through the DHCP REQD state. You can continue to scroll down the client and user screen to see information about the client's mobility relationship with the wireless network. Let me to review these states. First, start, client activity has just begun.